With a height of almost 30,000 cubic feet above the sea, the famous Mount Everest ranks number 1 as the tallest mountain to ever exist. It is located in an exotic region of the earth right between sacred Tibet and Nepal. More interesting is the amount of mysterious events that have taken place here, leaving humans in confinement for centuries. Sit back and enjoy the ride as we go over the 7 most disturbing things that have ever taken place on Mount Everest. Number 7. Maurice Wilson. Everest has always been an attraction place to many die-hard explorers, extremists, and travelers from all over the world. But no one had ever been as extreme as Maurice, a native from England. In the early 1930s, Maurice came up with a grand plan to make his plane all the way up to the tip of the mountain. Stupidly, he crashed his plane and climbed the remainder of Everest. As ridiculous as his plan sounded, he hired trainers in England to help him with his stamina and muscular physique to survive the rough terrain. He trained for almost 6 months and constructed by hand a small moth plane specifically made for the expedition. Maurice was extremely serious about this expedition, even fasting daily and praying to God for help. Maurice believed that he was being an example to society. He wanted to show others that the secret to life was praying and fasting. And not only would this help him in his climb, but it would solve all the world's problems. In spite of the fact that he lacked physical climbing ability and flying skills, he still managed to fly all the way from England to Nepal. He climbed Everest almost 23,000 feet. Unfortunately, Maurice did not happen to survive the climb. Almost 1 year later, another expedition team found his body as he froze to death. The team found a diary in his pocket, and when they looked closer, he was wearing very provocative women's lingerie, and close to his body were women's high-heel shoes, just bringing shock to everyone. When investigators did more research, they realized that Maurice was actually a known crossdresser. Maurice had spent years working in a high-end women's clothing store before Everest took his life. In 2008, famous historian Tom Noy proposed that Maurice climbed all the way to the top of Everest, but in fact passed away on his way down. But the reality is, we will never know. To this day, his body and clothes can still be found frozen in place on a corner trail of the mountain. Number 6. The Yeti. Referred to as the 8-foot-tall snow beast, the Yeti is said to be a vicious beast known to creep its way through the snow mountains of West Asia. Many people have reported that they have seen its huge footsteps in the snow, but you cannot find it unless you enter hidden caves deep in the mountains. In spite of many explorers looking for the Yeti all throughout the terrains of Russia and northern Chinese mountains, no one has ever proven its existence with actual footage. Those that have seen it from a distance state it is up to 8 feet tall, looking like a furry white gorilla and having an intimidating presence, with hands and feet as large as 2 feet wide. Even though this is what a typical Yeti looks like, the origins of human sighting of the Yeti all originate from the locals living near Mount Everest, with folk stories about the vicious monster starting almost 700 to 800 years ago. It's a story that almost each and every Nepalese and Tibetan man or woman is familiar with. Recently, new sightings, large footprints, and shocking DNA discoveries have just been found. One of the best examples is a footprint that was discovered at almost 21,000 feet by Eric Shipton when he randomly saw a footprint abnormal in size, as well as the Yeti head founded by Desmond Doig, which to this day can be found in the Kumjung Abbey. But the number 1 most shocking proof is Joshua Gates' discovery of Yeti hair. Joshua came in contact with a large trail of footprints on Mount Everest. best of all, there were hairs almost 34 centimeters in length. When scientists decided to test these hairs, they realized the DNA classification code was something they have never seen before. Although we do not have multiple sources of photographic proof, these findings show us how rare and scarce the so-called abdominal snowman is. Number 5. Terrifying ghosts on Everest. For decades, many people have reported paranormal activity on Everest. From seeing ghosts from a distance to things moving in paranormal ways, world record holder Dorje Sherpa has become a sensation on Mount Everest for a couple of different things. The first reason is the fact that he holds the record for the fastest climb of Everest in history, completing the climb in almost 8 hours flat. The second is what happened almost 4 days later. When he was ascending down from the victorious climb, he came into contact with a group of climbers who had frozen to death. Dorje states that out of nowhere, he spots random black-shaped figures in the shape of climbers surrounding him. They slowly get close to him and hold out their hands begging for food. As he was frightened to death, not knowing what is going on, Dorje realizes that from this point on, the mountain will forever be haunted by the non-surviving ghosts. The only way to get rid of this curse is to hold a massive funeral of all those who have passed on the horrifying expedition. Let's not forget, at such high altitudes, even the most experienced climbers will attain frostbite and snow blindness. As the brain swells, leading to speech dysfunction, mental malfunction, random hallucinations, and worse than anything else, wrongful decisions on the proper next steps to take. Dorje states that to this day, the bodies of all those frozen to death still remain on the mountain's trails. One climber is still hanging from a rope after he sadly slipped and fell. Number 4. Ueli Steck, nicknamed the Switzerland Navigator. He lost his life in the year of 2017 while he was attempting to climb Mount Everest. Ueli had a reputation in the climbing world as the all-time GOAT. He was considered the greatest climber of all time, as many avid climbers put him in the same category as Michael Jordan, Cristiano Ronaldo, Tom Brady, and Tiger Woods of mountain climbing. Not only was Ueli a famous climber, but he set record speed times, climbing the mountain from the north, east, west, and south sides. In 2009 and 2014, he received the Piolet D, or Award for Best Climber of the Year, an award so prestigious that it is similar to that of winning the Oscars for Best Actor of the Year. He was so famous in the climbing community that in 2015, he was named the National Geographic Adventurer of the Year because of all the new records he repeatedly broke. Something was different with Ueli. Not only was he extremely fast and sharp, but he knew the mountain like the back of his hand. And many competing climbers hated the fact that his stamina was impeccable. He almost never needed to take a break. While others were gasping for air and taking out their oxygen tanks, Ueli kept going. But what happened that led to his horrible death? On a regular day on April 30th, around 5 a.m., while climbing on the west side of the mountain, considered to be the outmost easiest trail, for some reason, Ueli decided to drift apart from the rest of the group. And with the worst of luck, he randomly fell almost 3,300 feet off the mountain. No one knows the reason for his fall or what led to the unlucky slip that day, but all we can say is that the climbing world lost its best ever climber. His body was found a few days later by a helicopter between camps 1 and 2 and taken back to the city of Kathmandu for a huge memorial service to be held. When the media reported the horrifying incident, everyone in the country was shocked by what happened. As the question arose in every mountain climber's mind, If the mountain can kill the greatest climbing athlete of all time, just imagine what it can do to us average climbers. Is it possible that Yeti had fallen? Or was there a break in the ice? Or did his lungs just collapse that day? As of today, there is no sure answer as to the tragedy that took place. Yeti drifted apart from the group because the expedition team was too slow to keep up with his pace. Unfortunately, the closest of his team members were almost 1 mile away, too far to spot him. The incident's reason is still unknown, but the loss of Yeti is considered the most devastating death in climbing history. Number 3. The mysterious third climber. Frank Smith, a famous climber from England, was extremely close to setting the world record as the first person in the world to climb Mount Everest. But all of a sudden, a huge storm took over the mountain, creating fierce and unbearable conditions of ice, windy skies, and oxygen levels so low that it was almost impossible to breathe. Out of panic, his entire expedition team had decided to go back down the mountain, but not Frank. Frank was not ready to give up. He disregarded the storm's conditions and almost completed the climb to the top until his heart collapsed at around 950 feet. Although he died on the mountain, when researchers found his diary, they saw that he had written about a mysterious third climber. He wrote that while making the climb, he found some chocolate in his pocket, split the chocolate into smaller pieces, and offered it to the climber right next to him. The whole time I was climbing the mountain alone, I got a strong feeling that I had another climber right by my side. It was an extremely strong feeling, so powerful that at no time I felt lonely. Another example of the third climber effect was described by Dougal Haston and his friend Doug Scott when they were climbing the same exact trail in the year 1975. It was nighttime, and as they made their tents, they saw that they were extremely low on food and oxygen. They didn't even have enough butane to create a fire to keep themselves warm. But then a phenomenon took place that neither of the men had an explanation for. Both Dougal and Doug stated that they felt a mysterious third climber right next to them. The third climber not only was a source of heat to keep them warm, but it began talking to them, giving them survival ideas. Throughout history, at least 6 other climbers have reported experiencing the feeling of the third climber phenomenon. Number 2. Team Russia. As a group of prominent mountain climbers from Russia decided to ascend up the mountain, it was the first ever climb by a group of Russians in 1952. More than anything else, it was a political move as they planned to take a statue of the current Russian president and flags to place at the tip of the mountain. At approximately 27,000 feet, they decided to take a deep rest and set up base. Their intention was to regain strength and the following day ascend north. But the next day, mysteriously, none of them were to ever be seen as they vanished to be lost forever. Funny enough, over the last 70+ years, every Russian news article or media outlet has denied that a Russian team has ever been out to Everest or even existed, even though it has well been documented that the Russian team was very well climbing Mount Everest. To this day, people do not know what has happened to their bodies. Number 1. The Fae Bodies. In May of the year 2017, climbers started to scream when everyone gathered around to see what has happened. They came to find out that 4 bodies were found dead in a tent near a base camp. The bodies were discovered by a rescue team sent out to rescue a Slovakian man that was lost while climbing. But great confusion arose as the bodies didn't belong to any of the documented teams, nor were they the bodies of any climbers that had checked in or retained climbing licenses with Everest Climbing Council. Soon the media outlets all over Nepal began broadcasting the story. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Civil Aviation in Nepal stated that the bodies belonged to a group of climbers from 2016, soon to find out that that was not the case. As of today, the investigation is still unsolved in the country of Nepal, as almost half a decade has gone by. And lastly, the Rainbow Fields near the north side of the mountain. It is located near the high tip of the mountain. Many mountaineers who have almost made it to the top but sadly have lost their lives are said to be missing in the Rainbow Fields. The area is nicknamed Rainbow Fields because of all the colorful jackets of the dead climbers that are remaining on the mountain cemetery. From far away, it looks colorful, but the closer you get, the more frightening the area feels. Many climbers make the successful trip to the tip of the mountain. Just as many fail to do so, becoming a new haven to leave our world. With temperatures far below freezing levels, their bodies don't decompose and remain frozen for decades fresh in the ice. As more and more people ascend up the mountain year by year, the more and more bodies we see being left behind on the petrifying Rainbow Field. If you liked this video and want to see more videos just like this, please stay tuned every week as more exciting and enlightening videos are released. And please don't forget to subscribe.